All right, are the judges ready? Great, I'll go and get started. If there's one phrase that sums up how I felt for a long time, it's this: I hate goodbyes. Now, to understand why, there's something you should know about me. I am a military child, and in a lot of ways, that's been a gift that I wouldn't trade for anything. I've met a variety of interesting people, traveled more than many do in a lifetime, and I've even had the opportunity to live in a foreign country. However, with this sort of upbringing, there is a caveat. You don't get to take any of the people you meet with you when you move again in just a few years. Every April, which little known fact is the month of the military child, there's an image I see circulated on Facebook that speaks to this, saying, the military child will say as many goodbyes by the age of 18 as the average person does in a lifetime. Now, whether or not that's true, I am now 18 years old and I have said a lot of goodbyes. While many goodbyes have been tough for me, the hardest were without a doubt the ones I had to say during my most recent move to Virginia at age 16. Now, maybe that's because I had made my closest friends up to that point there, or simply because, unlike my previous moves, I was a teenager who listened to too much angsty music. Either way, that move is when I felt the most that I hated goodbyes, but also when I did the most reflecting on what my life experience had taught me about them. You see, what I've gone through is only early exposure to what inevitably comes to us all. We all have to say goodbye throughout our lives. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's only a little sad, and sometimes it's one of the hardest things we'll ever do. Much of our identity is shaped by the people who matter to us, so the way we process departing from them is important. My life experience has given me a unique perspective for someone my age, so that's what I want to talk about: how to say goodbye. Now, the thing about many goodbyes, especially ones due to a major life transition, is that we often know they're coming. A favorite song of mine, Rivers and Roads by the band At the Head and the Heart, captures what it's like to expect a goodbye. A year from now, we'll all be gone, all our friends will move away. And they're going to better places, but our friends will be gone away. Knowing a goodbye lies ahead is sad, but this is where the first thing I've learned to do in saying goodbye becomes important, and that's to stay present. Staying in the present moment is always important, because once a moment is gone, it's gone forever. As philosopher Albert Camus said, real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present. Now, whether or not you do that depends entirely on your response. You see, while sadness is a natural and perfectly healthy response to expecting a goodbye, there's another that's not, that draws us away from the present moment: discontentment. Now, sadness, I think, is a sense of deep loss that has a profound ability to build appreciation for what was lost. Discontentment, rather, is a sense of disgust with your circumstances that leads to a mental rejection of them. I had some experience with this myself during my move to Virginia that I mentioned earlier. Now, when I first moved to Georgia, the place I would one day move to Virginia from, I had said goodbye to numerous previous childhood friends, and my parents and I thought we were done moving. And I really liked that thought, because after all the moving and goodbyes I'd done and said, just 4 years of a normal high school experience sounded fantastic. And I ended up making some really close friends who made that thought even happier. It's actually because of them that I started competing in speech and debate. Now, I especially remember competing at one particular tournament with them. And this one was special because for the first time ever, I really felt like I enjoyed speech and debate, and I had friends that I loved doing it with. I had a 4-year high school experience that I could be happy about. But then, the very first morning after the tournament, my parents called me downstairs and told me 3 words I neither expected nor wanted: we are moving again. Over the course of the next 4 months before moving to Virginia, I allowed myself to grow very discontent. But then I came to an important realization. Despite what was to come, I was still with my friends in the present, and I couldn't enjoy that limited blessing by being discontent. It's important for all of us to appreciate what we have while we have it, because it won't always be there. A favorite quote of mine comes from Mother Teresa, and it says, "Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow has not yet come. We have only today. Let us begin." Still, the present moment eventually passes, and the goodbye does come. This brings us to the second thing I've learned to do in saying goodbye, and that's to appreciate how the person changed you. Now, something I've noticed is that the farther along into adulthood people go, the less they usually remember their high school friendships as having been important to who they are in the long run. And as someone in high school right now, I find that a bit confusing because I love my friends today. I think they're fantastic. But it makes sense that high school friendships are oftentimes forgotten when you have decades of life experience with other friends, not to mention a spouse and kids. Still, I hate the idea that one day I won't see what my current friendships mean to me with the same clarity I do now. It's a simple fact of life we all have to face that we'll have to leave behind a lot of people who really truly mean something to us as new people enter our life and demand our attention. According to Psychology Today, however, this isn't all bad. They say goodbyes are a part of life. They can't be avoided, and there are good parts to goodbyes. They can represent temporary or permanent loss, but they also usher in transitions, new possibilities, as well as emotional and intellectual growth. Nevertheless, despite the benefits of goodbyes, the loss of certain relationships isn't any less sad. However, the disconnect between who you are today and who you will be becomes more hopeful when you realize something. Who you become is determined by who you are today, including the people that matter to you today. While we're each responsible for our own decisions, the people we surround ourselves with have a huge influence on what we value and what we do. And hopefully in any close relationship with someone, we'd be able to say that we grew and learned from them, that they taught us something. So if it weren't for each friend and family member you've met, you'd probably be very different. Who you chose to be simply wouldn't have been the same. So in a way, we'll always carry pieces of each person we've had the privilege to walk this life with. And I think that's something worth appreciating, even if memories do fade. However, even once we appreciate how the person changed us, saying goodbye again is still sad. This reminds me of when my family was moving from South Korea a few years ago, and we were all reflecting on our friendships there. Specifically, I remember my mom said these words: "While saying goodbye to these people is sad, the sadness of it is worth having known them." That statement brings us to the final thing I've learned to do in saying goodbye, and that's to realize the beauty of goodbyes. Yes, goodbyes are sad, but maybe sadness isn't such a bad thing. There's a quote by author Jonathan Safran Foer that captures the beauty of sadness. It says, "You cannot protect yourself from sadness without protecting yourself from happiness." That's the realization that helped me to accept my move to Virginia. Sure, it's sad I had to leave behind my friends in Georgia, but that's okay. That time period was still a part of my life, and the fact that I was sad having left it means that I truly lived it. Goodbyes are sad, but that's not something we should ever avoid. Because nostalgically reminiscing about someone you don't talk to anymore, mourning over someone you've lost, or saying a painful goodbye to a friend aren't bad things. Rather, they're evidence that you're living well and that you're loving well. So even though being a military kid hasn't always been easy, I wouldn't trade my life experience for anything. And I hope you feel the same about yours. Goodbyes are a tough thing. There's not much else that makes us so aware of life's transient nature. Moments come and go before we know it. Today I've shared with you 3 things to do in saying goodbye. Stay present, appreciate how the person changed you, and realize the beauty of goodbyes. These 3 things are simply ways I've learned to appreciate these moments. Because instead of growing discontent whenever I have to say goodbye, I want to use them to be grateful for what life has given to me. So if there's one phrase that sums up how I feel now, it's this: I welcome goodbyes without hesitation. Thank you so much.